Um, our next speaker is Scott Sellars. Scott is a senior policy advisor at the U.S. Department of State. And so we're going to get a little different view of PRP, I think, from this one. So go ahead and take it away, Scott.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So as Jeff said, I'm a senior policy advisor at the Department of State. I work in the office of the Science and Technology Advisor to the Secretary. First and foremost, everything that comes out of my mouth reflects only my personal views and do not represent the views of the Department of State or the U.S. government. So I have to kind of lay that out there for everybody. I'm here on my personal capacity to really kind of reflect on my experiences with the PRP over many years of research utilizing their tools. Okay, so with that out of the way, my background is in earth sciences. I started out in atmospheric science and moved my way into hydrology and hydrometeorology and remote sensing. So using satellite data to understand why rainfall patterns change or evolve. And before I started working with Larry Smar, Tom DeFonte, and Ilkai's research groups, I really had no networking or cyber infrastructure training beyond running MATLAB code on a couple of small in-house servers in our research group. These servers had like 48 CPUs, 4 or 5 terabytes of storage, and all the grad students were clamoring over the resources. And so during grad school, over the course of 4 or 5 years, we wanted to look at how atmospheric processes change over a long period of time. And in the climate realm, typically that's around 30 years. And NASA developed a very high resolution data set to where we could study changing weather patterns. And this was all done at the University of California, Irvine, where I did my doctorate. And it was like many of the workflows you've already seen today. We selected a data set, a variable. We developed and ran a novel on that data set, which would connect these atmospheric rivers, atmospheric processes in both time and space. So it was tracking these objects through time and storing those spatial patterns associated with each of the objects. And then we stored them in a MySQL database. And that's about as much database experience I had had at the time. And so when I moved over to a postdoc position, working with Marty Ralph down at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, still studying atmospheric rivers using NASA data, I found that I was waiting around for my results for a long time. This workflow was pieced together by graduate students with very little experience in advanced computing and cyber infrastructure. And so it was just pieced together MATLAB code and a few scripts to visualize some of the data sets that came out of our algorithm. And so the reason why I'm kind of telling the story, because I really thought I'd take a little bit of different track than my other panelists and kind of explain, how things have changed both by the technology, but also how this type of innovation in computational architectures changed my research at the time. And so, I'm sitting there in my office down the hill from the Qualcomm Institute, Scripps, with a MacBook Pro and an external hard drive, essentially running the entire workflow locally on my MacBook. And in 2015, 2016, we actually had to submit requests to NASA, to their servers, in order to receive FTP links to download 100 gigabytes of NASA data. And this could take up to a week. The request sometimes even to get the links would take a few days for them to organize. And of course, this was incredibly frustrating. And in my research group, nobody really knew how to improve it, right? We were earth scientists, hydrologists, atmospheric scientists. And so then I was able to meet with Larry Smar in his office through a series of strange, kind of the universe telling you this, you need to go talk to Larry and explain the challenges that you're having. And this is a meeting I'll never forget. I'm sitting there, I'm explaining to Larry my research, the workflow, the frustrations. I didn't know how to speed it up. I didn't know what tools were available. And at the time, the workflow was actually broken up between UC Irvine and UCSD. So we both did different parts of the workflow. And the entire time, he had this smile on his face. And once I finished, he was like, so we have plenty of tools to help you. Have you ever heard of Jupiter? And, I was like, it's a planet, right? I mean, I honestly had never heard of Jupyter notebooks before. he was like, we also have these devices called Fionas, these flash IO network appliances for downloading, processing data. Oh, when we have this incredibly fast, high-speed network that you can pass data back and forth from your collaborators. And as it turned out at UCSD, they had 2 Fionas. UC Irvine had a Fiona, and I wasn't even sure what all that meant at the time. And so it was great because then I finally met John Graham to actually take action and start converting the workflow and utilizing these new tools. And within 15 minutes, John was able to break down my workflow and explain which tools could be used where, from Kepler workflows to Fionas to Jupyter Lab to a thread server to help serve the data on the PRP. And he asked me, so where are you getting this data? Why is it taking so long? And I was like, well, we have to submit these requests to NASA. And John was like, well, why don't we just scrape their servers, put all the data on the PRP, and then you can pull it whenever you want, really fast. And I was like, yes, let's do that. And so we did that. And so we pulled down hundreds of gigabytes from NASA and stored them on a threads server, a part of the PRP, and immediately started to be able to tinker and explore not just our science and research, but also ways to further improve our workflow. And so from 2016 to 2018, we went from a wall clock time around 3 weeks based on submitting requests to NASA, running the algorithm on my laptop, transferring data to UC Irvine, getting the results back. That whole process took weeks. And after working with the PRP, Chase CI, and other projects at UCSD, we got that down to under an hour. And that included using GPUs. We found new code that could take advantage of containerized approaches. And so it was really an evolutionary process. It wasn't, there's very few apples to apples comparison when everything's constantly evolving and you're having to adapt to the different technologies that you have available, but they were available to us. And our whole research team really just kind of dove in and took advantage of it. And I didn't go into too much detail on the technical aspects. We have a paper in 2019. Its title is Bits and Bottlenecks of a Scientific Workflow Trying to Keep Up with Technology. That is the title. It tells the story of 5 different versions of our workflow as we were adapting to things that were coming online at UCSD and around the country. But what I wanted to kind of leave this panel with, and what I wanted to share with you all, are 3 big takeaways from my experience of working on the PRP and with all the engineers and improving our workflow. The first is a feeling of being liberated, right? So there's something special about realizing, how little, I knew, right? How little I know of what this entire ecosystem involved. And then almost immediately having light bulbs just go off every day for a number of years of what I could actually do with it. And I could dream big. I can now not only look at 1 variable, right, or 2 variables, but I can analyze hundreds and thousands of atmospheric variables so that I can do my statistical analysis and help base our inferences on more dimensions than just 1 or 2. So that it changed my research entirely. The second point is people, and people are everything. And in my current job, that's even more apparent than it was when I was at the university. But I needed some handholding during this process, and working with groups who had the tools and the knowledge that I needed, and working with people who were willing to work with me made this all possible. And so the key point is you have to have people who not just love technology and building it and innovating it, but also love the people who are trying to use it. And so, you want to make sure you have people like John Graham around. I've been trying to figure out how to clone him even to this day. But a lot of this was working with John, Dima, and many others in tinkering with these different technologies and adapting them to my workflow. And the final points and kind of reflecting on my experience with the PRP was the importance of toolboxes. And, if you only have 1 set of tools in a toolbox, people tend to approach problems in the same way. But if you're adding new and shinier tools to the toolbox and you're encouraging and supporting people to explore with them, it really changes your thinking about the problem. And you start asking, well, what am I trying to really build? And how can I use this in the future? And it leads to what I believe to be true innovation, And that's exactly what the PRP did for at least my research. And it's been an honor to be able to be the person in the back of the room, smiling with my mouth dropped as I listen to all these amazing genius engineers and computer scientists, flesh out these amazing systems. So, it was an honor to work with the entire PRP and Chase CI team over a number of years, and I'm happy to be here. So with that, I'll now turn it over to the next panelist. Thank you.
Great, Scott. Thank you.